This was very, very hard to do. There were times you almost had to turn off your heart to get it done, because it was very, very difficult to look at the footage. Again.
Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you'll be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. If you've been inspired by the guests that we've had on the podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, hit notification bells, whatever you can do on the platforms that you're listening on, so that more people have the opportunity of hearing these and engaging in our community. Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne. Our guest today is Justin Kron. Justin, we've had you on before. For people that haven't seen that episode, can you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm in Chicago, the Windy City. They don't call it the Windy City because of the weather. It actually got its name because of the long-winded politicians. I was at a city hall meeting just a couple of weeks ago, and I can attest to that. But I've had the privilege now for several years of being able to work in building bridges between the Jewish and Christian communities, particularly focused here in the Chicago area. And through that work, I was able to partner with a good friend of mine, Todd Moorhead, who leads a ministry called Grafted Ministries. He's based in California. And we made a film together called Hope in the Holy Land, Delving Beneath the Surface of the Israeli Palestinian Conflict, which released back in 2021. It has since become the best-selling film on the Israeli Palestinian conflict on Prime Video here in the United States. So, if you're interested in learning about the history and background of the conflict, I definitely, of course, would recommend our film. So that's a bit of the work that I do, and I know we'll get to talk a little bit more about the project that we're currently working on right now, called Hope in the Holy Land, the series.
Yeah, and maybe could you just say a bit about what we'll put the links to the movie in the description box, so they can just go there and click. I guess we can do that for Amazon. Anyway, we'll put something in the description box so they can go and check it out. Your social media as well. We'll put that there.
That's great.
Could you explain a bit, what's the difference between the movie and what you're doing with the Docu-Series?
Yeah, so after we released the film, there was a realization that we were still sitting on a lot of really good content that didn't make it into the 2-hour feature. And so we decided that we would use that content to create a 6-episode series, adding additional content, newsreel, and maybe a couple of more interviews to supplement it. And so we released the first episode of that series on September 1st of 2023. And the plan was to raise funds and release the next episode as the funds were raised and such. So right after, of course, as we know, September 1st, just 37 days later was October 7th, which fundamentally changed the conflict. And if you're going to do a series related to the conflict, of course, you can't not cover the events of October 7th. And so we decided that we needed to pivot, return to Israel, which we did back in May of this year, May of 24, and did several more interviews, visited several of the communities that were attacked, the Nova Festival site. We interviewed survivors, a former hostage, security experts, historians, and so that's now all going to appear in the future episodes of the series. And we just released September 6th and September 7th, the next 2 episodes. The first is called A Ticking Bomb, which really gets into the background and the history of Gaza before October 7th, the roots and the origins of Hamas and what are their aspirations. And then the next episode, episode 3, is called River of Tears, and that focuses solely on the events of October 7th. And so that's kind of the direction that the series has taken. And so we've definitely got plans for the next 3 episodes. We just finished up an interview just a couple of days ago with John Spencer. He is the chair of urban studies at West Point. He's considered to be the foremost expert in the world on urban warfare. And so his interview will appear in a couple of episodes.
And for people who want to know a bit about stuff that he covers, we had him on the podcast a few weeks ago. So you can go hear that. He's phenomenal, the stuff that he's doing in breaking down the information and how conflict is for, especially around urban warfare and subterranean warfare. With the documentary, there's a lot of challenges. Filming a documentary, putting it together, the editing process. In episode 3, a lot of that was live. Well, I say live, is footage that was filmed live during the attack and piecing that together. How was that? Like, it's difficult filming, editing, and putting something together. Here, you're taking footage that is out there and you're piecing it together, but it's extremely difficult to watch and see. And I'm sure there's a lot that you went through to see, are you going to put it in or not put it in? How hard was that compared to just filming and putting one together?
And I would add on top of that, not only hard putting it together, but you've been out there, you've seen the places, you've met the people. And I know for us that adds a whole other layer when you're watching it, because I was there, I saw them, I know where this happened. So you had that double layer really to face doing it.
Yeah, I'll just say this was one of the most emotionally draining projects we've ever done in comparison to the feature film. This was very, very hard to do. There were times you almost had to turn off your heart to get it done, because it was very, very difficult to look at the footage. Again, I think most of your viewers know, the Hamas, the terrorists, they captured so much footage of the atrocities that they committed on October 7th and then posted that on social media. And so there's different channels on it's called Telegram. And so we just went through those various channels and extracted those videos. It's hard to watch. I don't know how to explain it. And to visit, as I know you have, you visited, some of the communities in the Gaza envelope that were attacked, and you're standing in these places that are just completely ravaged, just devastated. And it's very, very hard to reconcile being in these places where such barbaric atrocities occurred. These villages, these communities are, on a normal day, very serene. They're out in the countryside. They're farming communities, and to try to imagine, what occurred there, these indescribable atrocities. It's very hard to reconcile that and to stand in that place. Some people have asked me, what was it like to be there? And I said, the best way I can explain it is try to imagine what it would have been like to stand in Auschwitz or in the Warsaw Ghetto just months after it was in operation. It was hard, very hard. And that's definitely captured, in the final product of what people will see on film. It's very emotional. And I would say, do not turn away from it. I think it's important that we bear witness to what occurred, particularly because there's so much denial and distortion regarding what occurred on that day. We need to be people who tell the truth, who share the truth and know it. And so I think it's important that people watch it, see it, do the best that they can to open up their hearts to it, and allow their hearts to be moved.
when we were going out there, I contacted a friend of ours who's out there, and I said, "Are you going to leave?" Because I knew they could go to America. And she said, "I want to stay here and walk through the suffering of my people with them." And I heard that, and I said to Jesus when we were going, "I want to just dip my toe into the suffering of your people." And that was too much.
Yeah.
Horrendous. Yeah. I think when you look and you see a child's shoe there, it's moments like that that you kind of get it, because the rest is too much to take on board. And about you?
Yeah. And like you said, especially when you've been, you know, the people, we are friends with survivors, you know, their stories and everything they went through. And like you said, it becomes even more emotionally taxing when you're passionate about subjects anyway. And then suddenly now you're directly connected to someone that was right there when it was going on. It takes it to a whole new level.
It really does. And just look to be able to step into someone else's experience, to have that empathy with them. I think it's what really then leads to a genuine compassion and action when you can enter into someone else's story. And so that's really what we're trying to challenge viewers to do as well. At the end of episode 3, there is a quote by Dietrich Bonhoeffer that comes up on the screen. It's one of his most famous quotes, which is that silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Which is really a challenge to the viewers. Now that you've seen this, you've seen the atrocities. What are you going to do with it? And hopefully people will step out of their comfort zones and speak up and stand up on behalf of the people of Israel, who are under attack still. Right, the war is continuing. It's a multi-front war, and we know that this is a war that didn't start on October 7th. Mm-hmm. This is a war that's been going on for nearly a century. The goal, the aspirations of Israel's enemies has been to wipe Israel off the map. I mean, that's what we're facing. That's what Israel is facing. It's a genocidal war, and so this is when good people like us, followers of Jesus, especially, I think we need to be the ones who are leading the way in standing up and speaking up on behalf of Israel.
One of the things we say in our conferences is, "Do you want to know what you would have done in the Holocaust?" And of course, everybody's going like that. And we say, mm-hmm. It's what you're doing now.
That's exactly right.
That's the bottom line.
Just going back to the footage, especially episode 3, almost from the start of October 7th, from that day, I was on most of the Telegram channels. And so I was seeing a lot of this footage almost from the beginning. And I think it was a few weeks ago, we watched or started to watch the film that was put together by, I guess it was the IDF or somewhere. They took all the footage and they pieced it together.
Film.
Yeah. So we started watching that, and I've seen most of the footage. But one of the very early clips in that was of a dead civilian and one of the members of Hamas with a gardening tool trying to decapitate the body. And it was extremely difficult. I couldn't get past that clip and I had to stop. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of it, but that one clip was like, wow, like this is just so visceral. With you putting together your documentary, did you have any conversations about, like, how do we thread this line of enough that it shocks people? They should see this and really have their eyes open, but not going so far that it's too hard to stomach and they just can't get past certain clips. Was that a conversation? How did you try and thread that line?
Yeah. So, it's always the question of, how much do you show, especially because you don't want to dishonor the victims or their families. So we cut things at certain points. You were talking about that one particular incident where someone was trying to decapitate someone that they had just killed. We do show part of that, but we cut it to black, right before, the really difficult part is, and, we blur faces and such, so it's always kind of that fine line, as you said, that you have to walk. The feedback that we've gotten so far is, that we did a good job with that. We can, those who are listening, watching right now, you could be the judge of that. Just know that we worked really hard to make sure that we didn't push it too far. But it's going to be hard. It's hard to watch regardless.
Yeah, it's always going to be hard. And like you said earlier, for people watching, it is going to be difficult. But try your best to push through and watch it. It's important that we understand as best we can what it is that Israel and the Jewish people have gone through. What was?
Yeah, let me just say this too. I just to say, I think one of the Israeli viewers who watched it, she made a comment on social media, and she was essentially pleading with people to watch it. She prefaced it with, if you have the mental and emotional capacity to do so, please watch it. Please watch it. And so I think there's many Israelis who understand how important it is for the world to understand what really occurred on that day.
100%. Yeah. When we took our first group out there, I connected with a survivor from Nova Music Festival through her dad. And when her dad initially approached her about speaking to our group, she said, is it a Jewish group? And he said, no, they're Gentiles. And she said, then I have to go and speak with them. She said, the Jewish community, Israelis, they know what's going on. They understand, but we are losing the Gentiles. And so she said, because they're Gentiles, I have to come and share my story. And that's still her mindset now. Every opportunity she can, she wants to share her story. She can't work. She's not able to function still. Even today is struggling with that. And this is something that she can do, especially for other people maybe that are not able to share their stories. And so much like that person, again, we need Gentiles. We need the world to understand, especially when the world is turning against us. The world is denying what happened, even though there is video footage for days that you can watch. So yeah, it is really important that people watch this and share it and get the word out there, spread it as far as they can. Let's not just sit back while the world as a whole denies what happened and try to just sweep it under the rug, or even justify the actions against Israel for whatever reasons they come up with.
Yeah. This part of the reason why we made this film and why we're working on this series is to make it easier for people to get the truth out. And people often wonder, like, well, what can I do? And well, what you can do is you can use your social media platforms to encourage people to consume content that will help them to see things clearly and to understand what's actually going on. This is, there's the event of October 7th, right? There's the war that's going on right now, but what's underlying all of this? What's the ideology that is driving this conflict? And that's the kind of stuff that we need to know. This is the education that people need. And so this is what we're trying to help people with. It's to get to the why behind the what's, right? It's not just people need to know what happened. They need to know why it happened. And for us as filmmakers, that's really the most important thing that I think we do in our work.
In the documentary, will you cover what's happening globally with Jewish people being attacked in the streets, what's happening in university, college campuses?
So our next episode, part of what we're going to be focusing on is the reaction after October 7th, and particularly what's been happening on college campuses here in the United States, not just in the U.S., but in other parts of the world, including yours. And I think that's very important for people to see. That will be coupled with reactions from Palestinians. So we spent a day in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, interviewing Palestinians who live under the Palestinian Authority. And we were able to capture 10 interviews from young to old. And we were absolutely blown away by their responses and their justification for what Hamas did on October 7th. This, I should qualify it with this. I think it was 8 or 9 of the people that we interviewed denied that Hamas had committed atrocities on October 7th, denied that they had murdered and raped, women and children, etc. Denied it. There was only 1 or 2 who actually agreed that Hamas had done those things. But across the board, there was unison agreement that it was justified. Whatever it is that Hamas did, it was justified. And there wasn't one person who said, well, that Hamas shouldn't have done that. And so this was the sentiment that we got. We also asked Palestinians if they felt that they could live peacefully side by side with a Jewish state. They all rejected it. There wasn't one Palestinian, sadly, that we spoke to who was willing to accept the existence of a Jewish state, which really is the core of this conflict that's been going on for now nearly a century, is the rejection of the existence of a Jewish state. So, so we will be, all that will be seen. I think it's going to be, if the events of October 7th and what we show in that is shocking to people, I think the reactions and the opinions of Palestinians will probably be even more shocking.
So I'm going to just ask a question that kind of digs into that. Do you think that was their reaction, or do you think they were driven by, any of them were driven by fear of speaking up and what would happen if they did?
So, no. So when we do our interviews in the Palestinian territories, we are using a translator, so a Palestinian who is doing the main interaction with those that we're interviewing. And most of the interviews are in Arabic. So there's a dialogue between him and them. And then, we translate it, of course, in the film. And so, no, they're giving their very honest opinion. They're speaking directly to one of their own. And so, it's a really good question that you asked. But this is very candid, forthright insight into the hearts and minds of the Palestinians. In fact, what we've noticed is that those who there's very, very, very few who sympathize with Israel within the Palestinian territories. Those are the ones who don't want to be on camera. Those are the ones that we have to try really, really hard to coax into being on film. There are some of those that you'll see. We didn't find any of those on this recent trip, but in the feature film, you will hear from some of those Palestinians who do sympathize with Israel.
So you're wearing a T-shirt and it says "Hope in the Holy Land," which is what the series is called. It seems a very weird title. Hope in the Holy Land, when everything that's going on, even what you've
Yeah.
told us up to now, we haven't seen the end of the series. But I said to Andrew, I'm going to ask, why did you choose that title?
Listen, we chose this title because we believe that there's always hope, and that we
Yeah.
should never lose hope. And as Christians, especially, because we believe that at the end of world history, right, that there will be peace on earth and goodwill toward men,
Yeah.
and that God is going to usher that in, right? That with God there's always hope. And so, of course, we always want to point people towards that. But even in the midst of this tremendous tragedy and turmoil that the nation of Israel is going through, that even the Arabs in the region are going through, it's amazing to find that there's always people, there's always these stories of hope. People who aren't giving up, people who are breaking through whatever walls exist in their hearts, or sometimes even literally in their physical space, to reach out towards the other, and to love their neighbors, to love their enemies. And these are the stories that people often don't hear, and these are the stories that need to be heard. And so we're always bringing that. In episode 3, we do end as best as we can. We try to end on a high note, and it's just showing the stories of some of the survivors from the Nova Festival and what they're doing to get their lives back and to heal, and so that's also those are stories of hope that people need to be aware of, and to know that those of us who are on the outside, we have an opportunity to bring hope into that situation, to show up and to encourage those who are there. When people are hurting, oh my goodness, that's when you need to show up. When someone's gone through a loss, right? I mean, just even in our regular, daily lives, if someone's lost a loved one, what do? You reach out, you show up, right? Listen, Israel's gone through a tremendous amount of trauma. The trauma continues, right? The war is still going on. There's still hostages who are being held in Gaza. They're going through a tremendous amount of trauma right now. And I think it's imperative for us to be there and to bring hope, to bring the arm of encouragement. And so that's what we're trying to encourage through our work.
During our trips, we had a lot of, in the midst of visiting the locations and hearing from people, etc. We spent a lot of time as well on the streets, just going up to people and saying to them, look, we came from whichever country, just to let them know that they're not alone, and the tears and the stories and things that came out of that. Do you have any story or something like that stands out to you from being there, where maybe you interacted with someone and just a story they shared, or just immense gratitude for you being there in a one-on-one conversation with someone?
Yeah, so we were at Kfar Aza, one of the communities that was attacked, and one of the guards there at the entrance, he was just chatting with him, and he just made it very clear. He said, one, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for caring about us. He said, I need to be honest with you. We've been very, very disappointed with the lack of response that we've seen from people around the world. He said the only two groups who are coming, he said, are Jews and Christians. Particularly, he said, evangelicals. Said, you're the only two groups. I wish there were more, but he said, thank you for standing with us.
Well, I would say,
and I need to. Yeah, go ahead, Daphne. Yeah.
No, carry on.
Yeah, I need to say this too. I think this is an important story for people to hear. Is, I spoke with a woman in Jaffa, Israeli, Jewish, and she was just explaining to me just how disappointed she's been by the lack of compassion, the lack of empathy that she's experienced from her own Arab neighbors. I think people need to be aware that sadly there's been many Arab citizens of Israel who, when polled, they always say that they would much rather prefer living in Israel than they would under a Palestinian state or in a Palestinian state. She told me that after October 7th, that she's a part of a What's group in Jaffa with several, residents in Gaza who are in this group, Jews and Arabs. She prefaced it by telling me, just make sure, I want you to remember that Jaffa it's very progressive, it's very educated. We pride ourselves, she said, on our diversity. But she said, Justin, not one of my Arab neighbors after October 7th expressed any sympathy, any solidarity of any kind. She said, I've been on the beach crying, weeping over what's happened. And I've had neighbors who've walked past me, knowing why I'm crying, who've not come up to me and put an arm around me. She says, it's only you guys from outside of our country who have come to put their arm around me. And so, again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is if you have the means to get on a plane and to go. Join you guys in what you're doing. I know you guys are doing trips. If you're listening to this right now, I implore you, join Andrew and Daphne on one of their solidarity trips. Do it. Go. It'll change you. It will impact you forever. This last trip, this was my 30th trip that I did back in May. No trip has impacted me more than this one. And I didn't see any of the biblical sites. That's not why we were there. No. We were there to just simply to be with the people. And all I can say is it's changed me forever.
And I agree. I'll never be the same again.
Yeah. We've said the same thing. I think I'm at around 30-ish trips out there, and doing these has been impactful in a way that none of the others have. The others have been impactful, but just hits in an entirely different way.
I pulled myself together. It doesn't get any easier.
I understand.
We'll put a link below to find out about our trips. And I thank you for pointing that out. I just want to tell one of our stories of meeting someone, and people say, what do we do when we go there? Well, there'll be plenty you can do, but it comes down to this simplistic thing. I was walking down the streets in Jerusalem, and I saw a mother and a girl, probably about 4, and I did what all our teams do. I smiled at her and she smiled back. So I said, do you speak English? She said, yes. I said, I've come all the way from England just to tell you you're not alone. And she said, wow. She said, my little girl, and I said, I think she was about 4, just said to me, why does everybody hate us? And I said, pick her up. So she picked her up, and I said to the little girl, I've come all the way on an aeroplane just to tell you how much I love you and how beautiful you are. And then I said to the mother, can I give you a hug? And on the streets of Jerusalem, I wrapped my arms around the mother and this little girl, and the mother sobbed and I sobbed, and I don't know how long we were there. But you can't do that. And I say this carefully, by just praying. You can't do that by emailing. You have to be present in their suffering. So we will take people. I would say don't just jump on an aeroplane and go. I don't think that's the answer at the minute. But we have led many teams,
Yeah.
so I'd say, please trust us and come with us.
Yeah. You talk about Arab Israelis. Like you said, it's a really complex situation. We have friends there who, one in particular comes to mind, is an Arab Israeli, and she is supportive of Israel and has been fairly vocal with that. But she then faces opposition from her own community. And so you have some of them who are supportive that face some sort of persecution from their own community if they are too vocal about that. And she has been quite vocal. But again, it's just another one of those intricacies within all of this, people call it an apartheid state, but there are all these different people groups that live there. But even within their own relationships with each other can be quite difficult and challenging to navigate, especially during this. Did you want to say something?
No, I think my emotional journey is nearly at an end. I would say we've been talking to other people and they say, does it get easier the more you talk about it? Actually, it gets harder the more you talk about it, I think, especially when we're talking with somebody who gets it like yourself as well.
Yeah, we did an interview with someone for another TV show, and they had been out to Israel. And he said, I've had different guests on the show talking about this, but none of them had been there. And he said to us, but you have been to some of the same locations, you've heard the same kinds of things. And at the end of it, he said, this felt more like a counseling, like a group therapy session. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Maybe
agree.
There's something that's quite big.
Israel.
Oh. No, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Israel's they're a resilient country. The people, they've been through, conflict ever since the creation, the reconstitution of their state, and they've been through a lot as a people, but they seem to always come together. 2023 was really one of the hardest years, even before October 7th. Right, there was a tremendous division among the people regarding the issue of judicial reform. A lot of protests on both sides, and yet here we see post October 7th. We're seeing Israelis from very different backgrounds, different ways of looking at things, coming together and standing with one another. And so, I have hope that the people of Israel are going to continue to, move through this and have victory over their enemies. So I think there's always a reason to find hope again in this. And so we just need to continue to keep focused and clear on just not what is happening on the ground exactly, but to remember that there's a sovereign God who is not asleep at the wheel when it comes to what's happening in Israel or in the world overall. And so we need to put our hope and our faith and trust in him.
Yeah, I would say that we have found that the hearts of the Jewish people are open in a way that we have never in 15 or so years of going out there. I was asked to speak to a group of Orthodox Jewish teenagers with two of the rabbis present. We've been invited into synagogues. We've had rabbis at the Knesset crying with us. Their hearts are tender, their hearts are open. But how long that stays like that, I don't know, because they can't stay that vulnerable. I think it's a moment in time that we need to be there and do exactly as we are commanded, which is comfort his people.
I know.
Yeah. And let me say here too, I think it's important to make this point that standing with Israel doesn't mean that you're standing against the Palestinians, right?
No, definitely.
So the Palestinians are entrapped, in a dictatorship. They're being led by a genocidal, particularly in Gaza, a genocidal organization that wants to completely wipe Israel off the map. This is what they're entrapped in, and so victory for Israel also means victory for the Palestinian people. Defeating organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah, the Houthis. This is going to be beneficial. This is going to help the people within the Palestinian territories. And so let's just understand, too, it's important that standing with Israel is not standing against the Palestinians. It's standing for what's best for the Palestinian people.
Yeah. And now, historically, if there are conflicts and things like that rise up, often other countries would start to say to Israel, hey, look, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. Each country have its own political reasons for taking certain stances, and Israel sometimes would be swayed one way or the other by what the US maybe is asking them to do or not do. In this, it seems Israel has kind of broken away from that, and that they are doing what they believe is the correct thing to do, even though all these mounting powers from around the world are telling them they should do something else, have a ceasefire. Hey, chill out a little bit. Maybe you shouldn't react like that. And Israel's doing what they feel they should do. There's a little thing coming up. People may know about it. It's a US election. And while Israel are doing what they feel they should do, and not listening so much to the international community, the US election will have an impact one way or the other. And so in terms of the advice or support that may or may not be given, how do you see that playing out? Either way, what do you see happening post the US elections?
I think it's simple. I think if Harris wins, you're going to continue to see a strategy of appeasement with Israel's enemies, which is a strategy that we've seen has not worked over the last over the last many decades. And so I don't think that is going to be helpful for Israel. I think if Trump wins, we're going to see him return back to the policies that he enacted during his previous administration, which was cutting off funding to UNRWA, sanctions on Iran. And so I think that is the stronger and more effective approach. We saw with the Abraham Accords how helpful that was. I think one of the main reasons why October 7th happened is because the money spigot was turned back on under the Biden administration. That helped fund billions of dollars into Iran's coffers, which they, of course, then used to support their proxies of Hamas and Hezbollah in their destabilization of the region. And so, listen, I think there's going to be significant implications based on who wins this election here in the United States. But the strategy of appeasement, of calling for ceasefires, there's never been a ceasefire that's ever worked. What Israel needs is victory over its enemies. That is what will lead to peace, not appeasement. And so I think we will see a much stronger stance from the United States regarding Israel's efforts to defeat their enemies under a Trump administration.
And I'd like to finish with the ultimate peace plan, God's peace plan. I'm taking a risk here because I haven't got my Bible in front of me and I might have got the words slightly mixed up. But we always finish when we're saying to people, God has a peace plan. And it's in Isaiah. And it says, in that day, he will say, blessed be Assyria, my people, Egypt, my handiwork, and Israel my inheritance. I might have got the people and the handiwork. Have I got them round the wrong way? But that is when God looks down, and that is his ultimate peace plan with the Isaiah 19 highway. And so, I just want to finish. God has a peace plan. He will fulfill it, and it will be in that day.
And there is the hope in the Holy Land.
And there is hope in the Holy Land. Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Amen.
Yeah, Justin, as we finish, and thank you for coming and taking the time, do you have maybe a parting word for people listening that forget the 10% that are for Israel, forget the 10% that are always going to be anti-Israel, but you have sort of the 80% in the middle who just don't know what to do, which way to go? Do you have a parting word for that sort of 80% in the middle there?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is the time for us to be the Dietrich Bonhoeffers and Corrie ten Booms of our day. Daphne, you had brought up earlier, if you always wondered what you would do before, the Holocaust or during World War II, look at what you're doing right now. And so this is what we need to explore in our own hearts. Are we going to be willing to step out and step up, to speak up? And so I would challenge everyone who's listening at this moment, step through the fear, be courageous, understand that God has a plan for Israel, and part of that plan is to preserve and protect Israel. And listen, God's going to do it with or without you. But listen, when I get to heaven and I'm standing, before God, I want to be able to say, listen, I stood with you on this. I wasn't afraid. Listen, there could be risks, to our lives, to our reputation. Okay, so what? I want God's favor. I'm not looking for the favor of man. So let's look to God. May his face shine upon us, not the faces of man.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I thought about Esther, who she was asked to stand up for her people, and there was a risk that she could give her life in doing that. But if she didn't do it, Mordecai knew God would do something. He will raise someone else up to do it, but there would be consequences for Esther if she didn't also stand up. And so, maybe we think, hey, you know what, I'm just going to remain silent. Maybe I won't. It's much safer that way. No, maybe there's consequences because of you not also speaking up.
And I would like to say something to the however many percent that you said who do get this about Israel. You have a mandate, and that is to tell the next generation. Because we're losing the next generation. If you have children, my children being raised to love Jesus, love Israel is a natural course of life. And I would say, tell them, if you have grandchildren, tell them, if you have nieces, if you have nephews, if you have young people around you, go tell the next generation. That is a biblical command.
Yes.
But this isn't an appendage to our faith. This is at the very heart, because we serve a king who was Jewish, is Jewish, always will be Jewish, and everything we have as Gentile believers has our roots in and because of Israel and the Jewish people. So we're an organization called Generation to Generation. Go tell the next generation.
Justin, thank you so much. We appreciate you. It's good to catch up. We'll put links in the description box again. So for people listening to this or watching it, go there. There'll be places for you to go and look at this. Check out the documentary, go watch the film, share those with people. The more people sharing it and getting the word out there, the better it will be in helping people have a greater understanding of what's going on, not just October 7th and post it, but also what the greater context is from where this happened. So Justin, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, really great to be with you both. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember, if it inspired you, share it with others so we can see more people engaged in this community.